Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show right here on Clemson at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. Got a great show set up for you guys tonight. Going to talk a little transfer portal. Who will be the next defensive coordinator for the Clemson Tigers? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the upcoming college football playoff games. All of that coming up and more in tonight's episode. But before we get into the show tonight, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go and hit that subscribe button for us. I was looking at the analytics the other day, and it was saying that 60% of our returning viewers are not subscribed to the channel. So if you guys go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us, we're on the road to 6,000 subscribers, and your help with that would be greatly appreciated. Share the video. As always, we want to bring in new people to the channel as much as we can. And then also we have the super chat feature available for you guys. If you want to ensure that your question and or comment gets read and responded to during the live episode, hit that super chat feature. It'll also support and help out me and Jordan Bowman and what we do here on Clemson at the Voice of College Football, and that would be greatly appreciated. Don't forget to like this video. It is a live video, and it helps out a ton on the live videos. And with all of that said, and without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman. What's up, man? How you doing tonight?
What's going on? It's great to be back. It's been a pretty eventful week since the last time we were on the air.
It has. Lots has happened. A lot of good things for the Tigers. As far as NFL decisions, we'll get into that in a little bit later. Got some transfer portal stuff that we'll lead the show off with. So tons of news. No shortage of information coming out of Clemson football this time of year, even though we're done playing games, so to speak.
Yeah, and with the events of today, and just with everything, the news of players coming back, all of that, it's really, really exciting that we have this much content to talk about, even in quote unquote our off season. And I'm just ready to get into it.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've had so much to talk about since the season ended for the Tigers that we haven't even gotten to do a season rewind where, we look back and we talk about what went good, what went bad, what we need to improve in 2025 and all of that. We haven't even got a chance to do that yet because the news cycle is just endless around the Tigers right now. But I will not complain because the offseason is long and daunting sometimes. So I'll take all the content we can get, and we'll eventually get to that season rewind, if you will, here in the coming weeks. All right, guys. Hope everybody had a great New Year's. But we're going to go ahead and dive into the show. But before we do that, shout out to the comment section real quick. We got 26 people in the live chat right now. Thank you guys so much for being here. Go ahead and do me a favor. Hit that like button while you're in here. Really helps us out. Tiggs in the house. First one commenting tonight. Shout out Tiggs. Wet Socks. Money Better. John Sarian, one of our regulars and our moderators in here. Intelligent Savage is in here, one of our regulars as well. Isaac Smith and Steele Gamble. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for getting into the comment section already. You guys are what makes the show what it is. So thank you so much. And with that said, Jordan, let's go ahead and dive into the show. We're going to open it up with none other than the transfer portal. In seasons past, this has been the arch nemesis of Clemson fans, if you will, with it being just thrown in our face repeatedly about, Clemson and the rest of the service academies are the only ones that don't use the transfer portal. Well, that quickly ended after the completion of the 2024 season. Dabo has now pulled in 3 transfer portal players that are going to be impact players for the Tigers. Obviously, we've already broken down the addition of Tristan Smith at wide receiver. We've talked about Will Helt and how he's going to help the defensive end group and probably start opposite TJ Parker. And today, a former recruit of the Clemson Tigers. They recruited this guy pretty hard. They came down between Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. Ultimately, Jeremiah Alexander chose to go to Alabama. That's where he spent the past 3 seasons. Had a bit of a limited role for the Crimson Tide. Obviously, most of his snaps are coming on special teams. Limited snaps at linebacker, but he was a highly recruited 5-star guy, 6'2", 249 pounds. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, so he's not a one-and-done guy. Adds much-needed depth to that linebacker room. What are your thoughts about the addition of Jeremiah Alexander and what it means for the Clemson Tigers going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that Jeremiah Alexander recruitment pretty well. This was a recruitment that Clemson, desperately wanted to win when he was coming out of Thompson High School. And Clemson was in the driver's seat for a lot of his recruitment. And, in fact, he was silently committed to the staff up until roughly a week before he made his announcement. That was one that Clemson it really hurt to lose. So I view this pickup as kind of a righting of wrongs, so to speak. And, I think that's one of the things that I had hoped Clemson would be able to take advantage of when they did start to really delve into the portal is, because they are such a great relationship building school, program, staff, that you would be able, like one of the things that Clemson would be able to do well is circle back on guys potentially that they missed on coming out of high school. And this is the first time that that's come to fruition. And so it was really, really cool to see, when he first announced that he was entering the transfer portal. Peter Woods was very active on social media.
Yeah, he wasted no time letting both Jeremiah and Clemson coaching staff know what he wanted to happen. So
yeah, it was very evident. It was very clear that they probably had conversations. Obviously, being high school teammates. So there were the seeds had already been planted, so to speak. And it was just a matter of he took his first visit to Auburn. Came out of that uncommitted, and Clemson was next on the list. And he had his visit yesterday, and from all accounts, even without a defensive coordinator, it couldn't have gone any better. And he decided the question was, well, is he going to take his visits to Ole Miss and Oklahoma? But he ultimately decided to pull the trigger. He said, "This is where I want to go," and announced his commitment today. So, as far as the player that you're getting a really great athlete. Like you said, did not play a ton of snaps at Alabama, but the few snaps he did play, it was mainly at linebacker. He was recruited out of high school as a defensive end, undersized defensive end. But he was a guy that needed a fresh start, and Clemson was a unique opportunity for him, a place that he was very fond of, obviously coming out of high school, and a place that needs some depth at linebacker. We've talked about this room for a little bit now, and your lack of depth, really showed itself, especially in the back half of the season. Especially, and then, you had already had Kobe McLeod go out,
Right.
and obviously you weren't able to get much and get that next step out of D. Creighton or Jamal Anderson, and none of the true freshmen were able to really step up there. So, you were really, other than Sammy Brown, of course. So you were really in a bind there, and you didn't really have many guys that were playable. So it was Barrett Carter, Wade Woodaz playing a million snaps a game, and Sammy Brown coming in as that third guy, because you did not have the depth. So Jeremiah Alexander he brings a much needed body to that room. And I think he, has some upside, because, that 5-star pedigree didn't come out of nowhere like that. That was like that. His rating was not for no reason. And he certainly has the athletic profile and traits that I think this linebacker room desperately needed. So I think it's a fantastic pickup. And one of the things that we said, okay, Dabo, you went and got, Will Helt, a guy that's going to be an instant impact type of player for you. And then you went and got Christian Smith, who adds a body. But you needed another, but one of the things that we were waiting to see was, okay, well, is Clemson going to go and get a guy that's going to, plug a hole as far as depth is concerned? And, maybe not a guy that's super highly productive at his previous stop, but has the upside to be able to give you some depth at the position that you're very thin at. And he went and did it. And, it's a massive win. It's the fact that you were able to keep him from even taking his visits to Ole Miss, who's a very big spender in the transfer portal, and Oklahoma, who obviously has relationships with that staff as well. It's a massive win. That can't overstate it, I guess. And it kind of shows that Clemson is willing to do what it takes when they have a guy that they want. They have taken advantage of it much better than they were able to in previous cycles.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think Clemson fans should be excited about a guy like Jeremiah Alexander. Obviously, production standpoint, people are going to look at it and be like, oh, whatever. But there was a reason that Clemson was extremely high on this guy coming out of high school. They recruited him very hard. Unfortunately, they lost out to Nick Saban in Alabama. But here he is arriving a couple years later onto campus, and Clemson's got him, on campus, and I think he's going to be a crucial depth piece. You talk about that linebacker room and how much depth was an issue this season. Had Sammy Brown not stepped up in the way that he did in that linebacker room, we would have been in a whole lot more trouble on the defensive side of the ball than we already were in. And it was not a great defense, obviously. That's stated in the fact that the defensive coordinator got let go at the end of the season, right? But you do have Wade Woodaz returning, right? You do have Sammy Brown returning. Those are going to be your top two guys in the room without a doubt. We'll see what Kobe McLeod looks like coming back off of a torn ACL. We'll see if Jamal Anderson can take that next step. D. Creighton, we'll see if some of those freshmen can step up. But I think Jeremiah Alexander is going to add some much needed depth to that linebacker room, and I think his upside is extremely high. So we'll see what we can do with him in the Clemson system. Jordan, what does it kind of say about Clemson, Dabo Swinney, the coaching staff, that they were able to land a linebacker, one of the higher rated linebackers in the portal, right? Former 5-star, without even a linebacker coach currently on staff or a DC currently hired. What do you think that says about Clemson, Dabo Swinney, and their ability to really go out and compete in this transfer portal world for players that they need to plug holes, as you said?
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows that relationships still matter. I think that's one of the things that, like I said, Clemson has done really, really well and has always done well under Dabo Swinney. And don't let people tell you that, oh, it's all about the money. Like, no, you still relationships still have their place in recruiting, and even in the portal where it's a little bit more expedited as far as the process is concerned. Um, and so I think it was big. I mean, like you said, you didn't have a linebackers coach or defensive coordinator, but you had the previous relationships, obviously, from his recruitment. I was Chris Rumpf and Nick Eason were with him on his visit, as well as Peter Woods, and I think that ultimately won you the sentimental kind of pull.
Yeah.
And he went and pulled the trigger. So I mean, it's a massive win for the staff, massive win for this roster and for the especially the floor of this team going into 2025. I mean, I'm not even talking about the potential ceiling. So I think it's a really big get for the the defensive side of the ball, and it's at a position where I think you needed to add a body and a guy that maybe is a little bit older. And has at least played some football, and especially at a program like Alabama.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And multiple years of eligibility left. I think that's key
yeah,
in getting a depth piece for that defensive side of the ball. Shout out to Peter Woods. I'm sure he was instrumental in Jeremiah Alexander going ahead and shutting it down before even visiting Ole Miss or Oklahoma, as you mentioned before. Jordan, I want to look back quickly before we move on from the transfer portal talk to this time last year, right? When Clemson was having trouble landing offensive linemen. We basically missed out on every lineman outside of one that came to our big recruiting event in the summer. They all ended up committing elsewhere. And we were trying to get a couple offensive linemen from the portal. We missed out on a few offensive linemen that we were recruiting, right? Most of them never even got on campus. So, in your opinion, what has changed for Clemson as far as recruiting the transfer portal, and why does it look so much different this cycle? Is it their aggression in the NIL space where, now they're giving the same perks that you get for donating to IPTE when you donate to the 110 Society? Is it Dabo Swinney being more aggressive in the transfer portal? Is it just we got more holes to fill and we can't do it with high school recruiting right now? In your opinion, what has changed the most about Clemson's approach to the portal from just one short season ago?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's a two-pronged thing. I think ultimately, first of all, it's Clemson's approach has changed. I think considerably from last year. They've casted a much wider net than they had in the previous cycle. Clemson, last year Clemson locked in on a few guys and really tried to get them to and really zeroed in on them, but didn't really leave any room for backfilling or any backup options. They kind of like how they do in recruiting. Like they don't offer a ton of kids in out of the high school ranks. And so sometimes, if you don't get your guy, kind of leaves you in a situation where you're having to pull the trigger on some prospects that you weren't really necessarily the highest on. And so I think that approach changed this cycle. They were able to, like I said, they were able to cast a wider net. They were more proactive in putting out feelers and just gauging interest. I think that was one thing that they did a lot better, and they were more. I think messaging was a big part of that. They were much more receptive. Just to people, guys reaching out to other players. And I think that went a long way. And then the second thing is that I think Clemson they've got their money together. That was one thing that was very apparent last cycle was they were not in the position to meet the monetary demands that some of these transfer portal guys were asking for, because they hadn't really put together, they were not well organized as far as that was concerned. And it's a lot different this year. And I think also the looming promise of revenue sharing certainly helped Clemson as far as their recruiting efforts in the portal as well. So I think all of that combined, just it made. I think Clemson was just in a much better position because I feel like Dabo made his decision that he was going to dip into the portal pretty early on into the season.
Right.
I think at the latest probably the Louisville game.
I think it was.
That's not me. That I don't know exactly, but that's just my feel. It felt like he was sowing the seeds in order to be able to go and get guys if he needed to pretty early this time around.
Absolutely. And it's, I think a lot of what you said makes sense. And Dabo's obviously, and Clemson as a whole has changed their approach to the portal and being a lot more aggressive. I think the NIL thing cannot be understated. And Clemson, as you say, having their money together this go around, and Graham Neff making that decision to give the same point system perks to donating to the 110 Society as you get to donating to IPTAY. I think that was super important, and I think that increased, and there was probably an influx of money that came into the 110 Society because of that move. So credit to Graham Neff and the leadership at Clemson for making that very key decision. And I think the revenue sharing is obviously Clemson's very forward-facing in this. Dabo's been talking about this for over a year now, and how excited he is about rev sharing and that they can finally use funds that they've always had to keep and retain and get new players, right? And use that as a roster management tool. And I think Clemson, as far as the reports we've heard, they're going to use the vast majority of that $20+ million, whatever it ends up being, for football. And then a small amount will obviously be divvied up over the other sports, but football is going to get probably 90% of that money. So pretty awesome from Clemson. I think it's been a breath of fresh air for Clemson to, kind of report on their signings of their roster and being a lot more public when it comes to their dealings in NIL. I think that was a piece that Clemson was missing a lot when it came to, just the NIL space and how college football has evolved and changed. And they needed a lot of that. And I like the new approach that Clemson is doing. They're not out here pulling a Colorado or a Florida State or anything like that. They're just doing what we've been saying on the show for a long time. All they needed to do was pull a couple key players out to fill voids in the roster. And so far this cycle, that's what they've done at the wide receiver position to get another body there because you lost a couple via the transfer portal. The defensive end position probably should have done it last year, but hey, better late than never. They got it done this year. And then obviously a point of need at linebacker. Last question on the transfer portal, and then we'll go ahead and move on. What, if any, more targets could Clemson be going after in the transfer portal? Are there any key positions, in your opinion, that still have not been addressed, or just additional depth pieces that Clemson maybe should look at targeting in this transfer portal cycle prior to spring practice?
Yeah, I do think there are a couple of positions that Clemson is certainly monitoring and that I would like for them to go after. One is punter. Honestly, I think
I'm with you.
Clemson is actively looking. I do know that. There is a name, but I don't want to sow that because that is a very tentative situation, and they're kind of putting that on the back burner right now. But Clemson does have their eye on a punter. That doesn't necessarily mean that he'll end up coming to Clemson. But I do think that is a place where Clemson really needs it because your punting situation this season was a disaster. And with the departure of Aiden Swanson, you have one scholarship punter, and I'm going to be quite frank, I'm not necessarily very excited or optimistic about his ability to take that step and be a serviceable punter this year.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of in a situation where I think you need to go get a guy that's played a lot of football, experienced, consistent punter, good hand. It doesn't have to be a Ray Guy finalist type of guy, but a guy that can at least give you 45 yards a
Please.
punt.
Can we just get longer than 40 yards? Is that possible? Because this year it was a rarity for sure.
So I do think Clemson is monitoring that in a position that they're looking at. The other one, I don't think it would hurt to get a running back. I know they like, they like the guys, and with the addition of Adam Randall, to the room, that might be a position they hold off on. I could see them going through the spring and kind of seeing how that room looks, and then making a decision. So I don't necessarily think that's something that they're going to attack in this portal window. But that, and then also, I wouldn't be upset if they went and got a safety. I have some questions about that position. There's some guys I really like, but as it stands right now, I mean, your starting safety group is going to be, your two starting safeties are going to be Kylan Griffin and Khalil Barnes, and so and
you're losing a dude in RJ Mickens. I don't know if your average Clemson fan out there understands how pivotal RJ Mickens was to the success that the defense did have this year. If that dude wasn't on the field, it would have been bad.
It would have been a lot worse.
Really bad. And I don't know if people understand how big of a loss and a hole that RJ Mickens is leaving in this team. Shout out to him. I hope he has a great NFL career. He gave Clemson, more than enough. So that's a huge hole to fill, obviously. And then Sherrod Koval exits. You can think what you want about him, but at a point in time, he was really coming along nicely. I thought he was going to be a really good, starter for the Tigers, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out there. So I think safety makes a lot of sense to maybe go get a piece there.
Yeah, I mean, there are guys that I like in that room. I mean, obviously Ricardo Jones. If Ricardo Jones takes that step, I mean that would be massive in his second year, because he did flash a lot when he was on the field. But as it stands right now, you don't have a lot of guys that have really shown much. Kylan Griffin, he's played a good bit his first 2 years. It's been really up and down. Khalil Barnes obviously was phenomenal as a freshman, took a pretty significant step back this year, moved around a little bit, played nickel at the start of the year, moved back to safety. I'm not really sure about that room right now. So, maybe a Ronan Hannafin steps up. I don't know. That's another position that, hey, you could wait and see how the spring plays out. But I don't know. I do have some concerns about that room, because I'm not sure, especially the long-term upside. I'm sorry, I said long-term. I'm not the short-term immediate quality play. I'm not confident it's going to be there.
Right.
I need. We got to see it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's talent in the room for sure, but it's unproven, right? Yeah. And they haven't produced on the field. So there's always a question mark when you have a bunch of guys that are, talented on paper, but you just haven't seen it come to fruition on the football field. So I think probably both running back and the safety position, I would assume that Clemson's probably going to go into spring with what they got on the roster on those positions. I wouldn't be surprised if they added somebody prior to spring practice. But if I had to guess, I would lean that they're going to go into spring with what they got, see what they got, and then, if need be, post-spring, go after somebody in the portal if they don't like what they see and how those guys have come along and developed. But punter for sure. We need to get a punter on campus ASAP because Jack Smith, I don't believe that he's just going to make this massive jump this season.
He's been in the program for this as well.
Yeah, he's been in the
3
program
years.
for 3 years. This is going to be his 4th season with the program, I think.
And he wasn't able to
And
beat
he's
it.
been behind
He
Aiden
wasn't able to
Swanson.
beat out Aiden Swanson for a reason.
Yeah,
Like, it wasn't
and
like he was.
that tells me everything I need to know. And I mean, no disrespect to Aiden Swanson at all. He just wasn't a great punter. He was below average at best for a punter. And if you're on campus for 2 to 3 years and you can't beat that guy out, that doesn't give me a lot of hope for the future. So I would definitely like to see Clemson go get a punter from somewhere. I saw somebody in the chat say Australia would be a good vacation spot for Dabo. Maybe he needs to, go take a quick trip and find one of them Aussie punters over there and get them over here.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think we'll leave the transfer portal there. I think we've talked about enough with the transfer portal. I do want to draw everybody's attention to the book release. If you guys do not know, our very own Mark Rogers has published his first book. It is called, hold on, I'm going to pull it up here so everybody can see it. So it's on the screen. Oh, no, hold on. Sorry. Wrong one.
We could do that promo first, but no.
Yeah.
Go and pull the book up.
All right. I'll get it here. 1 second. That's the one I want. All right. So, Disputed National Champions, College Football's Historical 1990s Reset. If you enjoy reading or know somebody that enjoys reading, if you enjoy learning about the history of college football, I encourage you guys to go get this book. Again, it's called Disputed National Champions, College Football's Historical 1990s Reset. It's a deep dive into the chaotic world of college football championship decisions during the 1990s. This pivotal decade reshaped the sport in unprecedented ways, leaving fans and experts alike questioning the system and the legitimacy of the crowned champions, which is why you find yourself with a 14 playoff and now a 12-team playoff because a lot of the stuff that happened then in the 1990s and how college football champions were crowned then. So encourage you guys to go check it out. You can get it on Amazon for $9.99. If you got a Kindle, you can get it on the Kindle app for 99 cents. Be sure to go leave a review over there and let us know what you think of the book.
Yep. So support the channel. It's a great way to support the Voice of College Football YouTube brand, and also educate yourself a little bit on an era of college football that pretty much shaped the way the sport is today. So
absolutely,
really great book, short read, but chock full of information. So I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, go check it out. I promise you will not be disappointed. I guarantee that. All right, Jordan, let's go ahead and get into some more good news for the Tigers. We had some NFL decisions be made since our last episode. Some ones that we had decent ideas that were happening, but they are officially announced now. Antonio Williams, he's back. Blake Miller is back. Still waiting on a decision from DeMonte Capehart. But just talk about those two guys and how pivotal it is it will be for the 2025 version of the Clemson Tigers, and how big those two pieces are, getting those guys back, convincing them to not declare for the NFL draft, giving them their due in the NIL department. And now we got two big ones back on campus.
Yeah, it's massive, man. I mean, it shores up your offense. You're bringing back 8 of 11 starters, and the 3 that you lost were guys that were out of eligibility. That, like, you brought back as much of that group as you possibly could have, and that's a testament to Clemson, the staff, the 110 Society, and what they've done in their retention efforts. And that was something that Dabo wanted to emphasize. Before anything else, before the staff changes, the DC and all of that. His number one priority, and that was what he stated to the media, is that I'm focused on making sure that Clemson retains their guys, and we keep our guys in Clemson, and that's what he did. And they put together 2 really, really strong deals for both Antonio Williams and Blake Miller.
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be pretty comfortable. Let's just say that. And they're back. Both were kind of mulling some real NFL draft, decisions, hype, and they were kind of contemplating whether to stay or go. And Clemson did what they needed to do to keep them home, and that's massive. And it's another shot in the arm for what was already going to be an exciting offense. To get your multi-year starter right tackle back, potential top 2-round pick, and then Antonio Williams, your best receiver over the last 3 seasons. It's massive, man. And Antonio Williams is I think he's 10 touchdowns away from the school record, and he had 11 this year.
Yes, got to get him that record next year.
Yeah,
got to get him that record. He deserves it. As good as this year was for him, I expect next year to be even better. Antonio Williams is just that guy. Everybody who listens to the channel knows how I feel about him. He was my impact player coming into the season. I thought he was going to explode onto the scene after being pretty much injured for all of last season. And he delivered in a massive way. And Blake Miller on that offensive line, I mean, that is a huge get for the Tigers. You shore up your right tackle position, your best offensive lineman by far this season, and you keep them from going to the NFL. And as you mentioned, they will both be living comfortably at Clemson, as they should be. So shout out to the 110 Society, shout out to Grant and Neff, shout out to the Clemson coaching staff for making these two guys, making it worth their while to come back to Clemson and run it back for another season that could turn into something special for the Tigers. We'll see how it plays out. It's still early. A lot's probably still going to be changing with the roster. But when you bring back as much starters and quality starters that Clemson did this offseason, you got to feel good about the program going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the outlook of this team, I mean, with all the production you have coming back, particularly on offense, it just, there is a lot of reasons to be excited. I think there's going to be some high expectations for this team in 2025. Don't want to look too far ahead, but and like you said, there's still some decisions. There's still some roster management things to shake out, now until the end of spring. So we'll kind of see where things look, but everything is shaping up to be really, really good, especially for the Tigers, especially offensively. And then you mentioned DeMonte Capehart, who we're still waiting on his decision. I think there is a good chance that he may be back. So
I got a good feeling.
got a good feeling. So I think that's there is a lot of positive momentum, it feels, around the program, and we're going to talk about the DC search. I think that's going to be a punctuation that could potentially be a punctuation point for this window before we get into spring. So got to feel really good.
Yeah, pretty special start to the offseason for the Tigers. I mean, every player that was eligible to come back that played starter or meaningful snaps for Clemson has come back. The only ones that we have lost are the ones that were just out of eligibility. So, I mean, that speaks volumes for the coaching staff, for the 110 Society and the NIL, and the work that was done right after the season to retain the roster. And that's going to start becoming something that's probably going to be talked about more and more in college football as we go forward with the transfer portal and basically every player in college football just being on a one-season type deal. Roster retention is going to start being the difference maker in teams that are competing at the highest level and those that are not, because when you're getting 30 new players a year, it's really tough to have continuity and build anything of substance. I mean, you may pop a year here or a year there, but as far as building a successful long-term program, roster retention is going to be key. And right now, Clemson is one of the best in the business at doing it. So shout out to the coaching staff and the 110 Society and all the people involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you look at the the 4 teams that are left in the college football playoff. Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas. All of those teams, yeah, they use the portal, but they're phenomenal recruiting. Right. They have competitive NIL, and they do a good job of retaining their best players.
Exactly.
So that's where Clemson needs to be in order to get back to that point. So
we've always said it. We've always said it on here. We're not gonna get in these bidding wars and outbid people. Frankly, Clemson's pockets aren't as deep as a lot of these other places, right? But just like we've stated on this show time and time again, if we can get in the ballpark, everything that attracted recruits to Clemson before NIL will still attract recruits to Clemson now, if you can get into the ballpark when it comes to the money, because then you could sell the rest of your program, and it sells itself. And Dabo's been one of the best at selling Clemson. So we know what he can do on the recruiting trail. We just needed to get in the ballpark when it came to NIL stuff, and I think we're on track to do that. And hopefully we can sustain this momentum for the long term.
100%.
Mark Rogers is in here. Thank you so much for popping in, Mark. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the platform that you give me and Jordan. It is greatly appreciated. You guys go check out the main channel, Mark Rogers. I'm sure all of you guys know who he is. And go check him out on the main channel and support over there, of course.
Yep. And we also have a super chat. Wanted to hit this real quick from Hit Wonder 101. Thank you so much for the $5. He says, I know I'm late, but I think a home run hire would be Jim Leonhard. When we're about to talk about the defensive coordinator search, so sit tight. But that's a name I mentioned last week. Would not mind. Obviously we'll get into kind of what's being said, what names are being thrown out there, but Jim Leonhard is one of those names that would definitely be considered a slam dunk if you're Dabo Swinney. So I would not mind that name at all.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be an absolute home run hire for Clemson if they were able to hire Jim Leonhard away. Again, we'll see. We'll see who's actually candidates for the job and who are just names being floated out there by various media people and quote unquote insiders and stuff like that. So we shall see. But we're going to talk about that in depth here coming up in just a second. So hang tight for us. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and sending in that $5 super chat. It's greatly appreciated. But quickly, before we get into the DC coaching search, if you will, I will give a shout out to the Voice of College Football Twitter page or X page, the Voice of College Football Network. You see it right here up on the screen. The best debate, discussion, and analysis with no offseason. Obviously, you see me and Jordan here. We will be here every single week throughout the entire offseason, as are most of the channels under the Voice of College Football umbrella, including the main channel over there with Mark Rogers, the Voice of College Football. Go over to X, give this page a follow. I promise you won't regret it. Great college football content at all times over there. So go check it out over on X. And while you're over there, go give Jordan Bowman a follow as well. Give me 1 second, get that off. His handle is right there. You see it right under his picture. That's his Twitter handle. Go check him out over there. Give him a follow as well. And he's got a lot of great stuff over there for you.
Debatable, but I try.
He does good. He's being humble. He does good.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
All right, Jordan. The time has come. This is what everybody's here for. This is eating up the news cycle for Clemson football since basically the clocks hit zero against Texas down in Austin, when pretty much everybody knew at that point, defensive coordinator, there was going to be a change. The rumors were out there even before the season was over. They got really loud after the clocks hit zero against Texas and Austin. And this past Monday, 2 days ago, Dabo Swinney comes out and officially announces what everyone pretty much already knew, that Wes Goodwin would not be retained as defensive coordinator for the Clemson Tigers in 2025. So then there begs the question, who will be the next defensive coordinator? And there's lists out there all over the place, and the rumor mill is on absolute fire about this DC and that DC. So we're going to go through I'm going to give you a list of names that have been talked about when it comes to the Clemson defensive coordinator position. Not all of these names are legitimate names, but we're just going to talk about them. We're going to give our opinions. We're going to talk about, of this list, who we would like to see hired, or we'll give a couple names that maybe aren't on this list that we would like to see Dabo take a look at, and just speculate, because that's the fun part of college football, and especially the offseason. Speculation is what us college football fans do best, and it's going to be a fun time to just speculate about these different DCs and look into them and look at their resumes before we hear official word from Dabo on who's going to take the reins for the defensive coordinator position for the Tigers. So I'm going to go through it real quick, Jordan, and then I'll get your thoughts on it after that. Tim Banks was obviously one of the first names that were kind of attached to this job. Saw a report from David Hood today that basically there's no interest there from Clemson's side. Maybe he's working an angle to try to get a little bit more money out of Tennessee. I don't know, but doesn't sound like he's going to be a legitimate option at the defensive coordinator for Clemson, according to David Hood. Again, I don't have that insider knowledge, but I assume David Hood does. So Tom Allen at Penn State, their DC, as linebacker DC at Penn State, also was a head coach at Indiana. He was coach of the year in 2020. So that's a name that's been floated out there. Tyler Santucci, Georgia Tech's defensive coordinator. Obviously, he was under the tutelage of Mike Elko for a long time. This past season was actually his first being away from him. So he was involved with defenses at Duke, Texas A&M, a lot of good defenses. Obviously, we know Mike Elko and the defensive mind that he is. So that's obviously a name that's been talked about quite a bit as far as Clemson's next defensive coordinator. Al Golden, Notre Dame's DC. Heard that name get floated out there as of recently. This is a more recent one. Currently, obviously preparing for a huge playoff game coming up. So don't think he's interviewing at this time, but who knows? I guess it could be an option. Stranger things have happened. Our last coordinator hire coached in a national title game and got hired basically the next day. So not saying it's impossible, but we'll see. Also, Clemson is the reason that he got fired at Miami with that huge loss back in 2015. So I don't know if he holds any lingering animosity for that. So I'm just kidding.
Wonder.
We'll see. Aaron Henry, Illinois DC, also had stints at Vandy and North Carolina State. His name has been floated out there. A big one, obviously one that we would both be excited about. Jim Leonard, defensive DB coach, pass game coordinator for the Denver Broncos currently. Obviously had his stint at Wisconsin. He was actually the interim head coach, and ultimately they hired. They did not give him the opportunity, so he leaves, goes for an analyst position, and then obviously to the NFL after that. So I think that would be a huge one. Jeff Hafley, the DC at Green Bay. That guy makes $3 million a year already. Obviously, he left the college game because of the grind of recruiting. So would he really want to come back and he left, I think, before the transfer portal and all that stuff got really crazy. So not only would he be back to the grind of recruiting, but he would be back to a new grind, which is recruiting your own roster at the end of every single season. Would that be a legitimate thing that he wanted to do with his current position as DC at Green Bay? I don't really know. That's just a quick list that I put together, Jordan. You can give your opinion on those names that I listed or add some new names. Your thoughts on Clemson's defensive coordinator search and where you would like to see it go.
Yeah. it's that list is, all of them are extremely strong candidates. Some more than others. Obviously, I think I'll start with the name that's been floated out more most recently, in Al Golden. A guy that's making really good money right now. I think around $2.25 million a year, something around there. Notre Dame doesn't release their they're a private school, so they don't
Private
have
school, yeah,
necessarily.
they don't have. They're like Miami; they don't have to tell you how much they pay their coaches.
Yeah, but I believe it was the same. He's being paid the same amount as their offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock, and I think he's on a 4-year, $9 million deal. So that's two. You do the math; it's roughly $2.25 million per year. So I do think that is in the range where Clemson would be able to offer a price increase. The question is, would Notre Dame match that? I think Notre Dame, realistically could. And obviously he's very comfortable there. He has a really, he's had a really strong, he's had strong defenses since he's been there. And they're having one of their best seasons in a long time right now, getting ready to potentially play for a spot in the national championship game tomorrow. So, I think that would be a slam dunk hire if Clemson were able to pull that one off. But, I think that's one of the more long shot ones. You mentioned one that, has been, I think it has been mentioned a couple of times, but people haven't really, looked that deep into it. But, Aaron Henry, you mentioned from Illinois. Obviously, I think those of you that watched this year's Citrus Bowl between Illinois and South Carolina, they put together a really, really good defensive game plan against Lenore Sellers. Much better than, considerably better than Clemson's did, at least in the fourth quarter. Would not be a terrible hire. You mentioned Tyler Santucci, a guy that, the past couple of years at Duke and then at Georgia Tech, left those defenses considerably better than when he found it, than where he found it. Duke was, when he was there at Duke with Mike Elko, their defense improved significantly. And then this past season, Georgia Tech's defense, who was one of the worst in Power 5 last season, jumped up to, I believe they were 46th in total defense. So I think he's a younger name that's a rising star in the coaching industry, but has shown that, even away from Mike Elko, that he can put together a capable defense. And obviously, if he were to come to Clemson, he would have by far the most talent he's had to work with so far in his young coaching career. So I don't want to go through every single name one by one, but those are. It's a really, really strong list. There are a lot of names that you could go out. We already talked about Jim Leonard. I think one of the things about this search is that it's so hard to, tell. Like, the indication is that Dabo wants to make a big splash, big swing type of hire. Right. And part of me feels like we're not necessarily, I think we might need to think outside the box a little bit, because, people are throwing out these names and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think Dabo has been really, really been keeping this process very close to the vest so far. There hasn't been like any definitive names leaking out, and obviously with, there's still being coaches coaching in the college football playoff and also pretty soon in the NFL playoffs.
Right.
There is a very wide range of candidates that Dabo could potentially, pull from. And, so there is, I'm prepared for pretty much anything, other than like I saw some, joke posts about Nick Saban coming out of retirement to be the defensive coordinator. I don't think it's going to be something like that. But, I really think Clemson has and Dabo, I think, has the backing from Graham Neff to go get who you think is the guy. And that could mean any of the names we mentioned, or, who knows, maybe even slightly bigger, or a name we haven't mentioned. And so I'm really anxious to see, as the college football playoffs, come to a close and we get a clearer picture about who's going to be available, kind of how that timetable shakes out. Because Dabo said he wanted to have it done by the end of the month. but what does that entail exactly?
Right. Yeah, and he gave a pretty broad time frame, right? He said, "I'll start the interview process immediately, and we'll have a resolution basically by the end of January or sooner." So, you know, does that mean he's waiting on somebody to finish coaching? Does that mean he's got a couple candidates that he's going to interview and weigh out the pros and cons of each? Who knows? But I can assure you, the only person that truly knows is Dabo Sweeney and maybe one to two other people that really know what he's thinking and what direction. Would not be surprised if nobody on this list is hired as the Clemson defensive coordinator, and it's somebody that nobody even has mentioned yet. That's kind of how the Garrett Riley hire happened. I had no inkling, nor do I think anybody did, that Garrett Riley was going to be an option for the offensive coordinator position at Clemson. I don't think anybody saw that coming. It kind of blindsided everybody. So Dabo knows where he's going to go. I'm sure he has a clear direction, but to your point, I think it's clear that he's going to go after somebody that's experienced. It's not going to be a first-time play caller. They're going to be experienced. They're going to have a resume, and they're going to be somebody that can really take the reins on this defense and take the talent that we have on this roster, which is substantial, and get it to the next level and get it to a level of play that matches the talent that we have on the roster. It's going to be a very important hire. All these names being floated out are speculation at best. No one truly knows what's going on. We all have from our list, names that we like. I think every name on the list really that's been, of the names that's been thrown around so far would be good hires, any of them, right? Some better than others, obviously. But I don't hate any of the names that have been floated out there so far. So it's going to be interesting to follow. I think I think he probably knows where he's going to go, right? Does he land his number one? I don't know. And we'll probably never know whether it's his number one or not his number one when he makes the hire. But it certainly makes for a lot of fun things to talk about as Clemson Tiger fans, and a lot of different DCs to look at and be like, oh yeah, this be cool. Look what he did here. Look what he did there. It's a lot of fun, and the flight tracker is alive and well on social media. Everybody's reporting planes coming from Ohio or Green Bay, Wisconsin, or wherever across the country. Why is this plane coming from this place to Clemson, South Carolina? It's so much fun to sit back and watch, and enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, this is awesome for the off season.
And it's the anticipation. We don't have these very often.
Right? Yeah. I mean, Clemson's not a place where there's a ton of turnover on the coaching staff. So this is a unique position. And like I said, the last hire, I mean, that happened so quickly. There wasn't even time for anticipation or really lists and stuff to be published. It was really quick. Hey, Brandon Streeter's out. Oh, by the way, Garrett Riley's the new offensive coordinator at Clemson. And you're like, wait, what? What just happened? Because we were
literally within like a 30 minutes of the news. Yeah, it was
insane. I remember it happened like within like 30 minutes to an hour of each other because we were about to go on air when the news hit 2 years ago. So this one's obviously not working out that way. Clearly, word got out pretty early that Wes was going to be let go, and it gets confirmed on Monday, and now we're having a whole lot of fun with just talking about who's going to be the guy that takes the reins as Clemson's DC. What I will say is, I know there's some fans out there talking about, is there still a possibility Dabo hires within? No, I don't believe so.
I don't.
I think if he was going to do that, we'd already know who the next DC of Clemson was. it wouldn't take to the end of the month if you were going to promote from within your staff. That doesn't make any sense. So he's obviously looking for somebody outside of the staff. He's looking for somebody that's experienced, and probably somebody that they're going to have to pay a significant amount of money to, but because it's probably going to be somebody that already has a pretty good job that you have to pry them away from. So I can't wait to see who it ends up being. There will probably be disappointed Clemson fans, no matter who the hire is. There will be people that say, "Oh, we should have hired this person, not this person." But hey, I truly mean it when I say I trust Dabo Swinney to make this hire. Dabo Swinney, if nothing else, has made it abundantly clear so far this offseason that he is locked in on getting Clemson back to competing for national championships. That's why he's doing the things that he is. That's why Wes Goodwin's no longer the defensive coordinator. So I fully believe that he will make the next DC hire with that in mind. Who's going to give Clemson the best opportunity to compete at the highest level of college football?
100%. I couldn't have said it better. I really think that Dabo is going to make sure that this hire, he's going to do everything, his due diligence, all of that, to make sure that the hire ends up being the right one, for this defense, because you do have a lot of talent on this side of the ball. And the performance this past season was not indicative of the level of talent that you have on that side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And, with the returning talent you have on offense, it would be a shame for your defense, which has been uncharacteristic for Clemson, for over a decade. It would be a shame for your defense to waste a really great offense. We have not, said that before. And so I think it's all important, especially with this group in 2025, to make the right hire to be able to get the most out of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun to watch. Can't wait to hear more speculation on social media and in Clemson media and in chat sections and message boards. It's fun to read that stuff, and we are anticipating and not so patiently waiting just as much as the rest of you guys. And I can't wait till it's announced and we can finally be excited about the future of Clemson football on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That it will.
Make sure you guys head over to the main channel, The Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers does a morning college football show Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called The College Football Show with Mark Rogers. Go check it out over on the main channel. Let them know that the guys over on the Clemson channel sent you over. Show some love over there, and that would be greatly appreciated. Last segment of the night, guys. We're going around college football, and we're going to talk about none other than the upcoming college football playoff games. Obviously, first up, we got Notre Dame and Penn State. They play first, right?
Yep, tomorrow.
They play tomorrow. Kickoff time at 7:30, playing down in Miami, Florida, in Hard Rock Stadium. Notre Dame taking on Penn State. The spread as of right now is Notre Dame minus 1.5, point total set at 44.5. Jordan, what's your feel on this game? You taking Notre Dame? You taking Penn State? Where are you leaning? Who do you think has the advantage? And is it going to be a close game?
I do think it's going to be a close game. I think both teams are built kind of similar as far as, I think these are two phenomenal defenses that are going to be on the field. And, both that have built their rosters around being physical in the trenches. I lean Notre Dame in this matchup. I think Penn State played really, pretty well in their semifinal or quarterfinal matchup. Probably, honestly, they should have played better overall, but I thought they were very dominant against Boise State. I never really had a sort of inkling that they were going to lose that football game, even when Boise State kind of sort of made it competitive. I felt it was more a product of Penn State kind of playing around. Not that they didn't take them seriously, but I think they were trying to do too much when they were clearly, they were running the football extremely well, and then they would do something silly. They would do what Clemson has done at times this year when they get into opponent's side of the field, where they try a trick play for no reason, or they run a play that they, instead of sticking with their bread and butter stuff that's been working, they try to get a little too cute. That's kind of how I felt, but I don't know. I think Notre Dame is better built to win this type of game with Riley Leonard. He's shown a lot of toughness, I think, in this playoff. He hasn't had the gaudy numbers, but I think that offense is it's not so super explosive, but they know how to move the football, and they know how to play complementary football because their defense is so good, and they're have really good special teams as well. I don't know. I feel like this is Notre Dame's year to at least be in the national championship game. I think this team is they've really shook off that Northern Illinois loss, and I think for me with this matchup, I think Penn State's defense has shown a little bit more holes, so far in this playoff. Like they can be had a little bit. I thought SMU schemed up some pretty good stuff in that first round matchup, but Kevin Jennings, like the turnovers just kind of put them in a hole. I thought they moved the ball pretty well, and they had opportunities to score more than they did. And then Boise State, they got their passing game going a little bit. A lot of that was because they were Penn State was dedicating so much to Ashton Genty,
right?
But they were able to move the ball a good bit. I think Notre Dame is just better built, and I think defensively, the way Notre Dame plays football, they flat out can cover. And one of the things that has been a question mark about Penn State for years now under James Franklin is receiving talent. They typically have solid offensive lines. They always have really good backs. Drew Aller is a future first-round pick at quarterback, potentially. But I don't see how they're going to get open against Notre Dame's defensive backs. And for me, I think when Penn State has struggled when they haven't been able to get guys open. And Notre Dame knows how to scheme around their limitations on offense, I think, better than Penn State has this year. And so that's why I think my long spiel. I like Notre Dame in a close game. I know we didn't say we were going to do score predictions. I could see like a 20, 21, 18, 23, 20, 4-21 type of game.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a low-scoring game. A lot of defense. Points are going to be at a premium in this game, I think. But ultimately, I just think Notre Dame is playing better right now. If you've seen, if you've really watched Notre Dame in the playoffs, they have played really well. Their defense was lights out, man, like dominating defense. Really playing well at the best time, right? And Riley Leonard, he's a guy that can, he can get it done with his legs. Not the greatest of arms, but he can make enough throws to win a game. And he's always got that element where he can extend plays with his legs. And when the coverage breaks down, when he gets outside of the pocket, he can really hurt you. And obviously, running game. So I definitely think it's going to be close. It's obviously somewhat of a toss-up if you look at the line. It really could go either way, but I feel pretty good about Notre Dame in this game. I think they'll just be a little too much. That defense will be able to limit Penn State a little bit more than Penn State's defense. Obviously, you mentioned Penn State's defense been a little bit more vulnerable as of late than the Notre Dame defense. So right now I trust Notre Dame's defense more than I trust Penn State's defense. And I think that's going to be the key to the game. What defense executes the best? And I think Notre Dame's just going to make a few more plays than Penn State. It'll be a close game. Maybe a 3-point game when it's all said and done. But ultimately, I think Notre Dame gets the job done against Penn State.
Yep.
Feels like their year, man. It feels like, at least to get to the national championship. Now, I'm not picking them right now to win the national championship, but it feels like they're on their way to getting to another national championship game. So,
yep, I'm with you.
All right, and then on Friday, down in Dallas, Texas. Man, how did Texas pull that one off? Down in Dallas, Texas, Ohio State has to travel all the way down south to Texas to take on the Texas Longhorns in AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World over there, for the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. Right now, the line is Ohio State -5.5. So obviously, pretty good favorite there. Maybe a little surprised that it's not more with the way that Ohio State's offense has been carving people up as of late. Can they keep that momentum going? That remains to be seen. Over under for the game, or the total points for the game, 53.5. Probably going to be a pretty heavy Texas crowd in that stadium, I would assume. It'll be interesting to see how many, I guess, Ohio State fans decide to maybe wait for the national title, assuming that Ohio State's going to be in the national title game, and save that trip to go to Georgia instead of traveling down to Texas. So I think as far as a fan standpoint, I think it's going to be significantly lean towards Texas. Obviously, Austin, Texas, not too far away from Dallas, Texas. So probably got a significant advantage when it comes to fans. What's your feeling on this game, Jordan?
Yeah, this game is really interesting because I think this is a matchup between probably the team that has been kind of skating by, so to speak, a little bit, has gotten their probably the most exposed of the teams left in the playoff, and versus the team that has just flat out bullied their first two opponents.
Right.
Two really talented opponents in Tennessee and Oregon, and it's hard for me to. It's hard for me to fully buy in on Ohio State and how they're playing right now. They are playing phenomenal. Like this version of Ohio, if the version of Ohio State that played against Tennessee and Oregon shows up on Friday, and the national championship game, they're winning it all. Mm-hmm. And so, but my thing is how do they respond? Because now the narrative has shifted for Ohio State, because their chips were down at the end of the regular season when they lost to Michigan. And
everybody's beating their head in. Oh, you can't beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Fire the coach. Ohio State's never beaten Michigan again. What in the world is going on? How do you pay $20 million for a roster and you can't beat Michigan on a down year? They were getting buried, and they responded in an emphatic way against Tennessee and Oregon. So
absolutely, and so. I want to know how this team responds to the narrative shifting on them, because before they were playing with a chip on their shoulder. They were limping into the playoff, and they were licking their wounds from the loss to Michigan, and they felt like they had something to prove. But now people they're the favorite to win the national championship right now, and so that is going to be the thing that I want to see the most is how do they respond to that. And you couple that with them having to travel into what's basically hostile territory in Dallas, Texas.
It's basically a road game.
Yeah, it's
basically no doubt about it. This is a road game.
I'm very interested to see how they respond. And for Texas, there's two schools of thought when a team has played the way that Texas has. Obviously they certainly had some weaknesses exposed against Clemson and Arizona State. Defensively, they did not play as well as they have in during the regular season. Mm-hmm. And offensively, they were kind of, especially against Arizona State, they were very limited. And so there's two schools of thought. It's like, okay, maybe they're just flat out not playing well, and that's going to continue against Ohio State, or the fact that because they've had two games where they've gotten exposed, maybe there's a they because they were able to get exposed early, maybe they come out a little bit differently. So that, with all of those factors, it makes it really hard to kind of get a read on this game. I'm going to pick Ohio State to win because I think they're playing really, really good football. And Ryan Day in playoff settings has just generally had a really good game plans, even when he hasn't won the football game.
Mm-hmm.
The team, I don't think he's really ever had a playoff game where they flat out just look unprepared.
Right.
So like, I think that is ultimately why I'm going to lean Ohio State in this game, but I think it's going to be closer than people think, because I think there's probably a sizable portion of people that think Ohio State is going to win this game comfortably because of how the two teams have played. I'm not convinced of that, especially with the glorified road environment and the fact that Texas, I think, has the best lines of scrimmage of really of the teams that Ohio State will have played in this playoff so far.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. They're certainly going to face probably the best lines of scrimmage they have. And, a lot of people are picking Ohio State in a landslide victory. They think it's going to look similar to the Tennessee and Oregon game where, Ohio State just comes out firing and it's, 21-0 before you can blink. And it's, halfway through the first quarter and it feels like the game's already over. I don't think, to your point, I don't think that's how this game goes. I know people are really high on Ohio State because of the two games they've played so far in the playoffs. And, stock on Texas may have gone down as the playoffs have gone because, of the instant classic overtime with Arizona State and allowing them to kind of claw their way back into that game. And then, some of the stuff that happened with Clemson, they ultimately put Clemson away. But into the fourth quarter, it was a one-score game. At one point in time, Clemson kind of clawed their way back in. So I get some of that, but again, home field advantage is got to be somewhat of a key here, right? This is going to be probably an 80% Texas crowd at least in AT&T Stadium when the game is kicked off. I think that is going to play a factor in it. And the one thing that you could say for Texas is they haven't played their best game in the playoffs yet. So is this going to be the game where they put it all together and that offense starts clicking and that defense gets back to looking like it did closer to like it did in the in the regular season? That could be the case. And if that defense starts looking a little bit closer to how it looked in the regular season, they could give Ohio State a little bit of trouble. I know Ohio State's got a ton of weapons on the outside, endless weapons at the wide receiver position. Oh, not to mention they got endless weapons at the running back position as well. But, their offensive line has not been the greatest at all times this season. They've been shown to be probably the weakest part of that offense. And I think Texas defensive line stands to maybe expose that a little bit and maybe get Will Howard a little uncomfortable in the pocket. You can start getting him disrupting some of his timing. Maybe they could, make some plays there. So I don't think it's necessarily a blowout. And honestly, I just talked myself into it. I'm going to go Texas for the upset just because, one, I don't like Ohio State at all. Can't stand them. I hate them a little bit less than I hate South Carolina, but they're up there, believe me. I don't want to see them in a national title game. So I'm going to go Texas to take it in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, home field advantage. Let's go Texas Longhorns in a very, very close game.
I like it. I will certainly be I certainly will have my Texas gear on.
Yeah. I'm rooting for Texas in this game. Typically when Clemson's out of it, I don't have any rooting interest, but Ohio State's one of those teams I'll root against. So, I'm all on the Texas bandwagon for at least one game.
Of course, it's going to get rubbed in our face that, and this would be the second time that a former defensive back for Clemson leaves and goes and wins a national if Texas were to go win the national championship, that would be the second time that that's happened where we've had a defensive back leave and go win a national championship the very next year. Obviously,
Yeah.
Darian Kendrick being the other example.
DK with Georgia, and then now Andrew Makuba over with Texas. But you know what? I can get over that.
I can get over that too.
If it means Ohio State goes home, I can get over it.
Yeah. And I would be genuinely happy for Andrew too. So that'd be cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'd be super happy for him. I mean, look, there's zero hard feelings there when it comes. I think for the most part, when it comes to Clemson fans and Andrew Makuba, I think everybody understands the decision that he made going back home to Texas, and it wasn't some sort of animosity, I think, on either side. So I can be happy for him.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, guys, talking about the college football playoffs, if you guys happen to be interested in throwing a little money on it, check out the Voice of
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
All right, guys, you heard Mark Rogers there. Go check out the Voice of College Football Bets for all of your betting advice. All right, Jordan, I think that does it for the planned portion of the show. We can kick it to the comment section for a little bit and chop it up with everybody in the comment section. I know we got 73 people in the live chat right now. Before you guys go anywhere, do me one favor. Go click that like button for us. And if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button for us. Me and Jordan will be here throughout the entire offseason, bringing you guys this weekly show. So don't worry. We will be right here all throughout the offseason, bringing you any news possible about college football and Clemson football. So thank you guys so much for showing up, being here. Show's not over, but just quick disclaimer, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. So with all of that said, Jordan, let's go ahead and hit the comment section.
Let's do it. We start a couple of y'all's chats from throughout the show, so some of these will be kind of old, but let's start with Jay. He asked earlier, he said, where would you rank the importance of this defensive coordinator hire compared to previous hires, especially given what this team can do in 2025? Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal question. It's certainly up there. Especially in this, if the chapter, if you could like write a book of Clemson football under Dabo Swinney and like break it all down into chapters, I think this is the most important hire of this chapter of Clemson football. I guess you could define it as like 2021-ish to the present. I think this is the most important hire and probably top 2 or 3 most important hires he's made, at Clemson. I just, when you consider what you're bringing back on this side of the ball, like you said, offensively, and the talent that you have defensively that you weren't able to get the most out of this past season, there's going to be high expectations to go and win this league again, and not just make the playoff, but make some, do some real damage in the playoff.
Right.
So I think, this is a massive hire for a lot of reasons, and because of the perception of the program, you're kind of teetering a little bit. Winning the ACC, I think, was a massive. People have, crapped all over the ACC and Clemson, and it's like it doesn't mean anything and all of that. Winning the ACC, but ultimately, winning the ACC was one of the most important things that Clemson did this season, because without that, the perception of the program is a lot different heading into this offseason. And that playoff appearance I think it was invaluable. You didn't win the game, and you certainly didn't play well for a lot of it, but I think that was invaluable for kind of the perception of the program and the direction. And so this is a really big opportunity for Dabo to put an exclamation point on what was a very rocky but ultimately still successful season, largely successful season, and parlay that into what could be a really special 2025 season, and make it the point that, hey, all the narratives about me being done and how I'm, my way of doing things and my tenure at the top of the sport is over, is just not true. And so, this is a massive hire for those reasons. And it proved, it's a chance for him to prove again that, he still is one of the premier coaches in the sport, and he still swings a big stick when it comes to, his pull and his gravitas, or whatever word you want to use, in the sport of college football. So it's massive, Jay. It's huge.
Yeah. This is one of the most important hires in recent history at Clemson, because of all the reasons that you stated, Jordan. The gravity of what could be in 2025 for this Clemson football team, with the amount of talent returning. I talked earlier about how we were just losing to the portal, and replacing it with high school talent, and that caused our roster to get younger and younger every year. Well, that won't be the case in 2025. We will be a largely veteran team when it comes to the big contributors on the team. And it's something that you don't want to waste, right? For probably, 2 to 3 seasons there, Clemson wasted a championship level defense with an offense that couldn't get out of its own way. And this season it got kind of flipped. The offense kind of figured it out. It feels like that we're finally in the right direction when it comes to the direction of the offense under Garrett Riley in year 2. It was much improved. I expect even more steps forward in 2025 in year 3 under Garrett Riley, especially with a quarterback like Cade returning and how much he's grown. So you really need a guy, a defensive coordinator, to come in and quickly turn it around and utilize the talent to the level at which it should look like. Because if you look at the roster and you look at the star ratings and you look at the talent, Clemson's defense should have been much better this season. And ultimately, I think that's why Dabo Swinney had to make the change. He said it. I think I specifically remember him saying at one point in time during the season in an interview, we're way too talented on defense to be this bad. That's not something that Dabo Swinney typically says, but it's true. So I think it can't be overstated how big of a hire this is. It's got to be somebody that comes in and delivers immediately. That's what we need, because 2025 could be a special year for Clemson if it all works out. That's a big if, but you hire the right guy and he comes in and utilizes the talent, it could be a pretty special year for the Tigers.
100%. Let's see. M Brand BB says, if you don't know where the like button is, you close the chat and it is under the video to the left side. Thank you for providing instructions to all our viewers.
Hey, shout out to M Brand. Appreciate you. Everybody go hit that like button. Go hit it right now. It won't cost you anything, I promise. It's free. And it does a whole lot for me and Jordan as far as helping us out on this show. So
check your account. Check your account if you don't believe us. There's no charges if you hit it. I promise. David Lauer says, "Why didn't Santucci follow Elko to Texas A&M?" That's a good question. I really don't know. Couldn't tell you.
maybe he thinks it's time for him to break off and kind of be his own, DC and prove himself without Mike Elko kind of being at the helm. Because when you have a coach like, take Georgia, for instance, right? Kirby Smart's the head coach. And they've gone through a couple DCs now. Does Georgia's defense look any different as they go through the multiple defensive coordinators? Not really, because Kirby Smart's got his fingerprints all over that defense, right? So I think for him, it's just outside looking in, complete guess. Maybe he's ready to. Maybe he thinks he's ready, that he can prove himself on his own and start building his own resume away from Mike Elko.
Yeah, it kind of like what on the offensive side with Garrett Riley. I mean, part of the one of the things that I'm sure attracted him to Clemson was the opportunity to prove himself at a big time program, without being under the tutelage of Sonny Dykes, because that he had been with him for a really long time, and he cut his teeth. But ultimately you gotta branch out, and I think that's just us speculating. I mean, there could be a lot of other reasons. Maybe he didn't actually, maybe he didn't like Mike Elko. Who knows? There are a lot of reasons that maybe he didn't want to move to Texas.
I mean,
there are a lot of reasons.
He spent some time at Texas A&M. Maybe he didn't want to go back. Maybe he didn't like it there. Who knows?
Who knows? David Wood asks, Craven and Jordan, where did y'all meet to start the channel? Well, we actually, we've told the story a couple of times, but we actually met here on YouTube. We were in a lot of the same college football, communities. Just a lot of we had a lot of crossover. We got along well. And ultimately when, Mark Rogers put out that, he was looking for hosts, and, we both had done, YouTube independently of each other. And, when Mark was looking for hosts for a channel, for the Clemson channel, we were like, hey, I think we could do this.
Right.
And, that was kind of how this show kind of started. Well, it was us two and two other guys at the start. If you guys remember, the OG fans of this channel.
OG ones know. We used to have 4 people up here talking and breaking down Clemson football. Yep.
But it kind of evolved into the two of us, and that's how it's been since. And we've had a really good really just a really good working relationship. We become friends. So that's just kind of how it was.
Yeah, it's crazy. Running the same college football circles, and it just kind of organically happened. None of this was really planned. So it kind of took on a life of its own, and now it's evolved so far into the show that you see now, and I'm sure it'll continue evolving, and we're just having fun with it. So,
yep. Isaac asks, all of Dabo's latest hires have been home runs. I think the DC hire will be too. Yeah, I mean, if you follow the trend, and it hasn't just been the coordinators, it's been the assistant hires too. Obviously, Garrett Riley, and then well, honestly, you can go back to 2022. With the replacement of Todd Bates with Nick Eason.
Yep.
And then obviously Garrett Riley, then Matt Luke. Now
Chris Rumpf.
Yeah, Chris Rumpf. It's very the trend is very clear as far as how Dabo has slowly, hasn't been as fast as maybe some people wanted, but slowly kind of overhauled this staff, and his mentality has shifted a little bit with how he wants to go about these hires. So all indications, it's going to be an outside hire, and it's going to be a hire that I think is going to be a big name. So should be excited for that.
Absolutely.
Jay says, I think most figured Streeter would get another year since the offense technically didn't improve. Boy, did he fool us. Yeah, I mean, it was a shocking thing. I mean, we both fully expected Brandon Streeter to be the offensive coordinator in 2023. We felt that we had our fair share of frustrations with that offense in 2022.
Yes.
But it was a marked improvement from 2021. They ran the football really well. DJ did improve, despite his, the kind of the collapse toward the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
He did win the ACC. And you were, honestly, maybe an Antonio Williams fumble away from the college football playoff. So we thought that, the offense would still had its clunkiness and its struggles against better defenses, but it was much better, and you were returning a lot of guys from that team. And we were like, I think Brandon Streeter is probably going to get another shot at this.
Yeah, I was convinced that Brandon Streeter was going to get another year. Yeah. One, you mentioned the improvement. Two, he played at Clemson. There's an award named after Brandon Streeter, the Brandon Streeter Award at Clemson, right? Like, he played for Dabo. He had been on staff for years. You wouldn't expect a guy like that would be a one and done type of hire. But to Dabo's credit, he saw that the offense needed to be completely revamped. And he didn't believe Brandon Streeter was a guy that was capable of doing that. So he made the move. So, yeah, it shocked everybody. I wanted him to move on from Brandon Streeter, but I didn't think that – I thought it would be at least another season. And I'm pretty sure we said that on the channel then. You guys can go back and look. But, I thought for sure he'd at least get a second season. But to Dabo's credit, he made the change, and turns out he made a really good hire in Garrett Riley, although year one there were some question marks. But year two was
even this year you had your –
and even this year at times, there's still, some growing pains, but I think a lot of people forget that Garrett Riley is a very young coach. He hasn't, he don't have 10 years of experience calling offenses. He's still, I think, evolving as a play caller. He's evolving in, what he likes to do and his system and tweaking things. So, I think it's headed in the right direction, though. I think Dabo made the correct hire on the offensive side of the ball.
And I think most importantly, I mean, you look at the development of Cade Klubnik.
There you go. You can definitely point to that because he made a massive jump this year.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first quarterback that you feel like made significant improvement year to year from one year to the next at Clemson in a while, honestly. I mean, even going back to Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, like those guys were, I don't want to say they were largely the same because I think despite what some people say, I do think Trevor Lawrence actually did get better at Clemson over these years, but it wasn't a significant jump.
Right.
And Deshaun Watson was he was just really good in 2015 and 2016. He was just elite both years. So, I mean, it was hard to get better. Although, and honestly, in 2016, he turned the ball over a lot more. So
a whole lot more.
Yeah. So it's been a while since you've been able to say, man, this quarterback is a completely different player than when he first got here. And that is what Cade Klubnik is. He's legitimately a top quarterback in the sport. And I did not think that was what we would be talking about at the end of this year. We were just hoping he could he can make the layups. And now he's at the point where he's creating.
He's starting to develop into a quarterback that you win because of.
Yes.
So
not just win with.
Yeah, not just win with. He's a major contributor and the reason you are winning. And that's not something that was being said about Cade at the beginning of the year. Nope. But, I mean, he put the work in and I mean, it's not just a little – he made a massive jump this year. And the fact that we got him back for another season, I hope we do not waste that. Because as we can see as Clemson fans, we got spoiled with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence basically back to back with the gap year of Kelly Bryant. No disrespect to Kelly Bryant, he was a really good quarterback, but we got a little spoiled thinking that you just roll in the next quarterback, and we figured out with the quickness that was not the case. Even if you do bring in the 5-star guy, they don't always work out. But luckily for us, Cade has, and it just goes to show that what Dabo says a lot, and what a lot of coaches in college say, like football's a developmental game. I mean, Cade as a freshman was not good, So, and he's gotten better each and every year. So,
yep. Jay says, asks, how much control do you think Dabo gives this new DC? Will he be able to get new assistants? Well, I think ultimately that depends on what staff changes are what potential more staff changes are made defensively. But typically, no, like Dabo does not.
No, Dabo does the hiring.
Yeah, he typically does the hiring.
You're not going to see a DC come in here and just bring in his whole staff with him. Like, that's not going to happen.
That's not even really common practice anywhere. Like that right. that doesn't really. At some schools, yeah, like occasionally, but normally, especially at the bigger programs, the higher level, the higher caliber programs, like you don't see like them make coordinator hires and that coordinator brings brings their whole staff with it. Like you didn't, like when Jim Knowles took the Ohio State job, he didn't take his Oklahoma State staff with him.
Like I think Garrett Riley brought one guy with him.
Yeah,
as an analyst type role, off-field type role. But that was it, and that's how Dabo will roll with the new DC hire. He's not gonna, he's not gonna be able to walk in and get rid of the entire defensive staff. That's just not how.
I'm sure he'll have input, and Dabo.
Of course,
he's not going to just be able to.
Well, Dabo's not going to hire a guy that doesn't fit in with, what's at Clemson right now. So
right.
That's not going to be a problem. But no, typically all of that is all decided through Dabo Swinney. Not that obviously Garrett Riley and whoever the new DC is has input over their staff, I'm sure. But ultimately that decision is made with one guy and one guy only, and that's Dabo Swinney.
Yep. Isaac says, offense and defense concerns flipped with DJ. We wasted a national championship level defense. Yep.
Yes, we did.
That 2021 defense, man, I feel for them. I think about that group every day. That was a special group.
Those dudes, they left it all on the field, though, man. They were
legitimately they were the different. Like we would have won 4 games, 3-4 games if our defense.
we would have been a 3-win team without that defense. And luckily, they didn't just give up, because had they, they had every reason to give up. Yeah. They knew the offense wasn't going to do anything, but they trotted out there and spent crazy amounts of minutes on the field trying to will us to victories, which they did. So,
yep, makes me sad.
So sad. So much wasted talent.
The Brian Bersees, the Miles Murphys, the Tyler Davises, the Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry. You still had James Skalski, Trenton Simpson, Andrew Booth.
Jeez, man. Wow.
You had some dudes, man.
You had some dudes.
Dylan says Dennis Allen will be Clemson next DC. Obviously, far-fetched. Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I'm not ruling anything out.
Dennis Allen. That's Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he ain't going nowhere. That man's been in Iowa for 30 years.
Oh wait, no, Iowa's Phil Parker.
Oh, that's Phil Parker. You're right.
Yeah.
Dennis Allen.
Does he mean Tom Allen? I'm not sure.
Penn State. DC, Tom Allen?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look that one up. I'll move on. Walter Burke says, guys, in your opinion, do we need Alexander more at linebacker or edge? Linebacker. Well, honestly, I mean, you could potentially see him in both roles, but they recruited him at linebacker. So, I mean, that's what position he's going to fulfill. I'd say linebacker, just because you don't really have a whole lot of bodies there that have have played a lot of football, or at least been in college for very long. So I think you needed the numbers there. So linebacker for sure.
The Saints head coach?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
See, I'm terrible. I'm really terrible with NFL head coaches. Yeah, Dennis. Yeah, okay, then yeah, that's definitely not happening.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Like Mike says, you guys happen to hear anything going on with that Kirk Herbstreit recently? And he thought, yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, talking about after the game when he kind of went on that rant.
Yeah, when he was talking about the ratings and talking about
that's the most recent thing. But even before that, he went on that rant about it can't be about wins and losses. It's got to be about who you've played. Whole rant went on.
Yeah, Kirk has been kind of on a ESPN SEC propaganda.
He's been on some other level lately. The fact that anyone would say it can't be about wins and losses, it's got to be about who you've played. What? Yeah. I don't. So why don't we just, not play? Why even play football games at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? Wins and losses don't matter? Yeah, they do. There's a reason that underdogs win all the time. On paper, they would lose 100% of the time, but they don't always. So I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And then the whole TV rating thing, about, it took a shot at Clemson, mentioned Clemson, and, you don't want those small schools in the South. They're not good for TV ratings. Like, what are we talking about?
I mean, first of all, especially bringing up Clemson in ratings,
go look at Clemson's ratings. We are far from the bottom when it comes to ratings. Go look at Clemson. Anytime they get on a national stage, they absolutely deliver when it comes to eyes on the TV. So I don't know what he's talking about or why he's taking a shot at Clemson there, but yeah, Kirk Herbstreit, he's been on some weird stuff lately. I don't know what he's got going
Clemson
on.
Degrees, like that's I don't know.
Man. Yeah, he's got 2 sons with Clemson degrees. I don't know why he's taking pop shots at Clemson. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And Clemson's not a team that doesn't deliver when they get on the biggest stage when it comes to TV ratings. Go look at all of their ratings from the college football playoffs.
Yeah. Wet Sox with a good question. I got this question a lot when I went to Clemson. He says, Jordan, does your last name share a relation to Bowman Field? No, just a coincidence. Bowman's a fairly common name.
They named it after Jordan when he got there.
I used to lie. I used to be like, that's my great grandpappy.
Yeah, no. it was named after my great grandfather.
Just don't look him up because
don't look him up.
You might not look the same. But that's just don't worry about that.
Probably not.
But yeah, no, that's just a coincidence. No. Okay, those are all the starred ones. Let's get some more recent ones. Intelligent Savage asks, safety behind Barnes already here or transfer portal for you guys? Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the show, I think Clemson could evaluate a transfer portal option there, just because I have some questions about how ready that room will be to play right away. And, I don't even have the utmost confidence in Khalil Barnes. I hate to say that, but obviously he took a massive step back this year. And I thought he got kind of more back to himself a little bit towards the end of the year, but that still
he's definitely he's got to take a big jump this next season if he's going to be the one of the guys that we're depending on for majority of the snaps, which he probably will be. We need him to take a big step forward.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a little bit of a sophomore slump there. So and obviously behind him, Kylan Griffin has played a decent bit, but his snaps have fluctuated, and it's not great, and it hasn't always been great. But one thing he does do well is he seems to always be near the ball. Like he's gotten his fair share of interceptions over the couple of years, but. Yeah, I just, from a down-to-down consistent play basis, I think there's another step that he needs to take before I feel comfortable with him being, a full-time starter there and being okay. And obviously, I think the world of Ricardo Jones. Like, I can't wait. I want to see what jump he takes in the spring because I think he has all ACC, future NFL draft pick potential. But yeah, that room is thin, and you don't have like real senior leadership there, like you did when especially with the departure of RJ Mickens. So I think you could, if Clemson were to get an experienced safety out of the portal, I would not be upset with that. Emmanuel says, Kay Klubnik understands that Deshaun Watson and Trevor are the standard for being an elite quarterback. Yeah, at least at Clemson. I mean, they've set a high bar. Next season, I think Kay potentially could be the best quarterback in the country. Yeah, I think he's certainly going to be in that short list of guys
heading into next year for sure.
Yeah, especially you look at early Heisman lists, he's pretty high up there.
And I expect him to get even better next year. So he's definitely going to be, in that top 5-ish range of quarterbacks in the country next year, I would assume.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Dylan says, give me Bresee back. Yeah, I wish he had. Yeah, Brian Bresee is one of the careers I'm going to, especially we're going to look back and be like, man, it's a shame.
Yeah.
That we didn't get as much out of him because of injuries. Like he could have had a truly special career. Like it was still a good career, but it didn't deliver, the hype it got when he first signed because, injuries. It's just
injuries, really, really took a lot out of his Clemson career.
Yeah. But he had a good year this year. He had a good year this year for the Saints, I think. I think he
did really good. Yeah.
7.5 sacks, I think, this year at defensive tackle. It's pretty good, man.
Dexter Lawrence still out there.
Oh, yeah.
Doing his thing.
Dex is, I mean.
He's killing it, man.
You could argue he's like the best defensive player regardless of position in the league. Like he's doing some special stuff right now.
He's a problem.
Yeah.
He's a problem.
He's not. I don't want to call him Aaron Donald. I mean, and they kind of play different. Like Dex is a true nose tackle, and so he's not gonna
with a crazy amount of sacks for a nose tackle.
With a crazy I saw some of the advanced like pressure numbers and pass rush win rate
that is not typical of your nose tackle.
Yeah, it's like on these charts you'll see like Dexter Lawrence at the very top right corner of a graph when it comes to like pass rush win rate and stuff rate and all that. Like, and he's the next closest defensive tackle isn't even close. Like it's ridiculous what he's doing right now. He is borderline generational right now. The stuff he's doing. Tiger Tom asks, do you guys think any more defensive assistants are likely to be shown the door now that Goodwin has been dismissed? Well, it's been hinted, by other sites that Dabo potentially is not done with changes on the defensive staff. We'll continue to monitor that. There hasn't been any changes made, that have come to light, since Wes Goodwin has been fired. So we'll see. We'll continue to keep our eye on that.
Yeah,
but that is
and also something to look at is who they hire at DC and what position group do they coach,
right,
because that could trigger a change, right? If they coach safeties, for instance, obviously you're going to make a change at safety coach, and then you still don't have a linebacker coach, so you'd have to go out and hire a linebacker coach. Because ever since Brent Venables, the DC has been the linebacker coach, from Brent Venables to Wes Goodwin, but that's not necessarily going to hold true depending on who you hire at DC.
Yep. And so, and potentially, Dabo doesn't necessarily, when Dabo, until Dabo zeroes in on a target and knows exactly what staff changes he's going to have to make to get that guy, you might not see it. So I don't know. We'll see. That process is still ongoing. Jay says, how great of a recruiter is Dabo for getting a linebacker without a linebacker coach? Yeah. We talked about that. Chris Rumpf and Nick Eason were the ones that hosted Jeremiah Alexander, and they did it. Those two, obviously their recruiting chops speak for themselves, and you see them working together. Not hard to convince. It's a really easy sell for those guys. So, especially with Jeremiah already having the familiarity with Clemson. So,
I mean, Dabo's an elite recruiter. We've always known that he's an elite recruiter. His ability to recruit is why way back when we landed a guy like CJ Spiller, right?
Sammy
Watkins, like he recruited all of those guys. He is an elite recruiter of talent.
Yep. Let's see. John says Herbie finally showed his cards. His jihad for getting max SEC and Big Ten teams in the 12-team college football playoff is all about max revenue for his employer. Yeah.
I mean, that's all. The comment about you don't want these small teams in the South like Clemson. Those teams aren't good for ratings. I don't know what else that can mean other than you only care about what's good for ESPN's pockets, which I guess directly affects your pockets. I mean, but as a guy who, it's really disappointing because as a guy, I really like Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah,
I have liked him for a long time. He's one of my favorite guys on college football game day, calling a game. I mean, he's really good, right? And for a guy that walks around and says that, he truly loves the sport of college football and, what it means and the traditions of it. And, and then to say some of the stuff that he's come out and said recently, it's just like, I don't understand where a lot of these comments are coming from, because it doesn't match with what he's always said that he believes about college football. Why are we even talking about TV ratings? I know it's important for the TV contracts and stuff like that, but are we really going to start bringing TV ratings into how we rank teams in a postseason? Like, is that what we're talking about? Because that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's got no business in any sort of ranking structure or anything when it comes to college football and postseason play and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't. It has no like what. Nothing about college football should have TV ratings, especially with the structure of the postseason and all that, and how we
And you got fans out here bragging about TV ratings. Why should any college football fan care about TV ratings? I don't care about TV ratings. I could care less what the TV ratings are for any Clemson game or any college football game. I'm gonna watch it anyway.
Right.
I don't care what the TV rating is, and I don't know why most college football fans care about it. It's weird to me.
It has no effect. Like, watch what you want to, watch what you're going to watch. Watch what you want to watch. Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter how well, the ratings are? Like, I don't get any enjoyment. I don't get any enjoyment because I found out, oh my God, oh wow, 5 million people watch this game like that.
Yeah.
doesn't change my perception of a game. It's either a good game or not.
Has the highest TV ratings. So what?
Yeah.
Did they win the game or not? Like,
yeah.
I don't care what the TV rating is, and I don't think any other college football fan should either. That's for TV execs to worry about. I could care less. It's got no business in college football.
Couldn't agree more. DJ mentions Woodaz would be a good safety. Well, he was a good safety, or it could have been a good safety. I don't think he has.
He's put on too much weight now.
Yeah, you'd have to. I don't think he's cut. And ultimately, just his style of play is more fitting for a linebacker anyway. He's very, very down. I mean, he's a better sideline to sideline player than a lot of people give him credit for, but he's still very much a downhill guy. And even when he played safety as a freshman, he was still very much a downhill player.
You do got Ronan Hannafin over there that's transitioning, so we'll see what he does.
We'll see. Emmanuel says, unpopular opinion, but I believe by Phil Maffa being hurt the second half of the season, it forced Riley to open up the playbook and circle our whole offense around Cade, and it has paid off. I honestly don't disagree with that. I certainly wish you had a healthy Phil Maffa, but if forcing, kind of changing how the offense operated around Cade Klubnik in the back half of the season. I think you could certainly see the benefits and see it pay off heading into this season, because Cade did show that he could put the team on his back a little bit. Obviously that win over Pitt when you had no semblance of a running game was massive. And just some of his performances late down the stretch, obviously the Texas game being just probably his just best played football game of his career, I think. You had a real shot to potentially go and win that game if you do a couple of things differently. But I think there's a lot of reasons to that gave you some confidence. Not just Cade, but if you're a fan watching, like, okay, we really have our quarterback. Like the improvements weren't a mirage or a product of just playing bad defenses, like so many people like to say. Like Cade has legitimately become a really good quarterback.
Look what he did against Texas.
Yeah,
the best pass defense in the nation coming into that game. Gave up only 4 passing touchdowns all season. Cade put up 3 against him. I mean, you can't really argue that.
Yep. Dylan talking about Quinn Ewers being back for Texas. I'm skeptical about that.
If he comes back, Manning's going to there.
Yeah,
I don't know that. I don't know that Manning's willing to sit another season. I mean, maybe he is. I have no idea, but I just don't. I don't see how that would work out.
And I don't know if and honestly, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if Steve Sarkisian would
he want him back.
Yeah, would he really want I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't say no if Quinn wanted to come back, but I don't know. I think especially with Quinn's injuries and kind of the limitations he's had this season, I don't know if Texas would be all that super. I don't know if they'd be super excited to get Quinn back.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe that's just
Ewers is better than Manning. That very well may be. I don't really know how good Manning is. I mean, you've seen him in limited situations. He's been okay in those situations, but nobody really knows how good he is. But
I know that staff thinks the world of Manning.
Long term, you'd be, if he's not willing to sit, you'd be basically cashing in, a season with Ewers for the unknown after that, because I would assume Manning would hit the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know for certain, obviously, but
and And I guess it ultimately depends because Arch Manning's career so far has just been so curated by his recruitment was so it was very much controlled by his family. Like there was they had a very clear plan and demands and what they expected and kind of the succession plan. They were perfectly fine with Arch going there and sitting behind Quinn Ewers, but at the point where Quinn is, you would expect Quinn to hit the draft. He decides to come back for another year. Maybe that changes the calculus a little bit. So, I don't know about that. But I know that Steve Sarkisian and that staff thinks the world of Arch Manning. And if you let him, you take Quinn, Quinn comes back another year and Arch Manning transfers, and then Arch goes and potentially dominate, has a really strong year for somebody else, then it's going to be like, dang,
it'll be interesting to see if he does want to come back, how they handle it.
Yeah. Intelligent Savage asks, would you slide Shelton Lewis back at safety with a little more size on him? You could do that. I honestly, probably the better suited player for that role would be Ashton Hampton, because he has so much positional versatility, and Shelton has started at corner. I think like Dabo has talked about it. He said, I don't think you'll just see Ashton Hampton at corner. So I do think that means the staff is really receptive in
he's so good at corner though.
Yeah, I know. I would hate it because he was so good, but
I mean he was lights out at points and times this season. But I mean I get it from a body standpoint.
They feel like they could move him basically anywhere.
He certainly would fit the safety position with no problem.
Yeah. That's a good question. All right, let's do a couple more, and then let's get on out of here. Walter asking about Caden's story. So that's funny. We were actually talking about him a little bit before we went on the air. Yeah. He says, "What's the word on Caden's story? Defensive tackle or edge?" Well, I mean, he's repped at both. He was listed on the defensive end, depth chart, throughout the year, but hasn't really been able to crack the rotation at either position outside of late game, blowout situations.
Right.
I don't know. Not much has been said about him, to be honest. But who knows? Maybe he takes a step this year and works his way into the rotation. But I don't know. Hasn't been promising so far. That's for sure. At either position.
Yeah, doesn't seem to. I don't know. Just hasn't had the ability to crack into the rotation at all at either position. To your point, so I don't really know what is the future for Caden Story. Just from a number standpoint, I guess edge. Defensive tackle room's pretty. Especially if you get DeMonte Capehart back, it's I don't like his chances of getting any very much playing time at the tackle position. When you got, if you get DeMonte Capehart back, and then you got Peter Woods and Stephon Green and all of those guys. Evan Brown Schuler will be in the mix. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess spring will tell us on Caden Story, I guess.
Yeah. Michael Brown says Ewers is a high floor guy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I think he can be. I think Quinn Ewers post injury just has not been the same guy. And Hustler Inc. talks about he's kind of echoes that a little bit. He says Ewers has more arm talent than Manning. Yeah, the debate. Manning is certainly a better athlete, as you say, but yeah, Quinn Ewers certainly has, like, especially pre-injury, like Quinn Ewers' arm talent is pretty spectacular.
Elite, yeah, for sure.
People criticize Ewers because injuries have derailed his consistency. He's still not healthy. He's playing injured, limited. Yeah,
He's still hurt. He's still got that big ankle brace on.
Yeah.
He had that oblique or rib injury or whatever it was. So yeah.
It's changed his mechanics. Like, I've noticed, like, he's throwing the ball differently. But like, I still, like, even pre-injury, Quinn Ewers was very shaky. Not from a talent standpoint, but from a processing, going through his progressions, making the right reads, like that, like the mental aspect of that, of playing quarterback, honestly was not very good last year. And he got bailed out because he had some really, really good talent on his offense. So, like, that part of his game, I don't think has improved. I think it's improved, but I still think there's a lot that he has to make improvements on. And I think that's why he's possibly not going to go first round. We'll see if he does declare. I'm not necessarily convinced he'll go first round. And because of the injury, I think that's made that even more likely, because just that those medical concerns are going to be something that's going to get brought up. So yeah, I mean, I hate it for him because, coming out of high school, like, he had a higher high school rating coming out of high school than Trevor Lawrence. Like,
that's crazy.
He was he was special, but he just has not had that level of career because of injuries. And I do think there are some mental aspects of the quarterback position that he still needs to get better at. Want to end on a Clemson related one. Dylan says Ashton is gone. Ashton Hampton is gone. If Mike Reed leaves, he said he came to Clemson because of his relationship. I know he signed with 110 Society, but I don't see him staying if Reed leaves. I mean, Mike Reed absolutely was an instrumental in landing Ashton Hampton. Does that mean that if Mike Reed were to leave, he would leave? Maybe. Yeah, but I'm not necessarily convinced that that's the case. I mean, that'd be something to watch. But
I mean, there's obviously a chance with just kind of who Mike Reed is, that there's some sort of exodus at that position group if he does end up leaving. That's certainly a possibility. I would hope that Clemson would be able to hang on to as many of those guys as possible. But with that said, I don't want Mike Reed going nowhere. I hope he right where he is. Objective number one, keep Mike Reed exactly where he is, and we'll be just fine. I wouldn't want to test the waters and see how many guys would leave if Mike Reed left. So I think it's important for Clemson to keep Mike Reed for as long as they can. I think he's proven his ability to not only acquire talent, but develop that talent once it's on the roster. So I got no complaints about Mike Reed, and anybody who thinks that we should move on from him, I just respectfully disagree.
Yeah. I have not seen much sentiment that, that he is like, that he like, people want him to leave. I think it's more.
I don't think so.
People are worried that if he's passed over for the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think that's the worry is him being and he's clearly been passed over. He already knows that. He knows he's not going to be the next DC. If he was going to be the next DC, it would have been announced on Monday.
Yeah.
When Dabo announced that Wes Goodwin was no longer the DC, he would have announced that Mike Reed was going to be stepping in. But that's clearly not the case. And hopefully he's okay with that. I don't know. I don't know what Mike Reed's coaching aspirations are. Who knows? Like, does anyone out there know if he wants to be a DC? I don't know that.
He may not.
I have no idea. Does he want to be a head coach one day? I don't know. Not every college football coach wants to, progress to the head coaching level or even the coordinator level. Some guys just want to coach their group, and that's what they want to do. Is Mike Reed that guy? I don't know. I'm just saying there's no like, just because he's an elite cornerback coach doesn't mean he necessarily wants to become a coordinator.
Right.
He is compensated really well at Clemson. He's got I'm sure he likes being at Clemson. He's been there for a long time. Dabo Swinney's one of the coaches that a lot of other coaches like to work for. Good work-life balance there, I think. So, I think we're assuming that Mike Reed wants to be a DC, and he very well might want to be, but I don't think we know that for sure. He has been offered other prominent positions several times.
Yeah.
I.e., Georgia tries to hire him away, I think, every offseason. It feels like.
Yeah, they've certainly, taken their swings at him. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much. You guys were awesome. A lot of people in the chat, so obviously we can't get to everybody. But we greatly appreciate it for sticking with us for these, 2 hours, 17 minutes now. It's awesome. And we had a great turnout tonight, obviously, with everything that's going on, to be expected. But seriously, if you haven't already, make sure that you have hit that like button. Like we said, it's free, doesn't cost you any money, and it does support the channel. So, yeah, thank you. And I think it's going to do it for us.
That's right. Thank you guys for showing up. We will be back here next Wednesday at 8 p.m. To bring you yet another edition of the All In Show. Thank you guys so much for showing up, supporting the channel, getting into the chat section, chopping it up with us. Hit that like button on your way out if you haven't already, and subscribe. Until next time, guys, go Tigers.
Later, y'all.